The wreckage in the desert. The sun was burning hot over the endless desert. Sand stretched in every direction. Nothing moved, nothing lived, except one man. His name was Jake. He was a scavenger. Every day he searched the dead land for broken machines, old tech, and forgotten metal. He lived alone, far from cities, far from people. He liked it that way. That morning, Jake's scanner picked up something strange. It was deep in the desert, far from any known crash site. The signal was weak but constant. Could be something valuable, he said to himself. He packed his tools, took his small hover bike, and followed the signal. It took him 3 hours to reach the place. When he got there, he stopped and stared. Half buried in the sand was the wreck of a large warship, not just old but ancient. Its metal was blackened, burnt, and torn apart. This was not from any recent war. It had been here for decades, maybe more. Jake walked slowly around the wreck. The air smelled like oil and rust. The silence was heavy. No wind, no sound. His scanner beeped again. Still active, he whispered. Something's alive in there? He pulled out a flashlight and climbed inside. The ship's interior was dark and broken. Wires hung from the ceiling like dead vines. Sparks jumped from damaged panels. Jake moved carefully. Every step echoed. Then he heard it. A voice. Very faint, almost a whisper. Help me. Jake froze. Who's there? He shouted. Silence. He followed the sound. In a small chamber near the back, he found her. She was sitting against the wall, half covered in sand and metal debris. Her eyes were closed. Her body looked human, but part of her face was metal. One arm was completely robotic. Tubes ran from her chest to a power pack beside her. A cyborg. Jake had seen cyborgs before, but never like this. She was old, not just in years, but in design. Her tech was from another era. Some parts looked handmade, others were alien. She opened her eyes slowly. You're human, she said. Jake nodded. Yes. Are you alive? She gave a weak smile. Barely. Jake looked around. How long have you been here? I don't remember, she whispered. Too long. Jake knelt beside her. Can you move? She tried. Her mechanical arm twitched, but her body didn't lift. No, she said. I'm too damaged. My systems are shutting down. Jake checked the power pack. It was nearly dead. One spark left. If I don't move you now, you'll die. She looked at him. Her eyes, one human, one robotic, were full of something strange. Sadness? Hope? I don't want to die, she said. Not yet. Jake didn't know why, but he believed her. Something about her voice felt real. Honest. Human. He lifted her gently. She was heavier than she looked, but not too much. Her body was cold, lifeless. Yet, she felt warm in a way he couldn't explain. As he turned to leave the ship, she grabbed his shirt with her robotic fingers. Wait, she said, her voice trembling. Jake looked at her. What? She leaned close and whispered. Run. Jake froze. Run? Why? But she didn't answer. Her eyes closed again. She had passed. Out. Jake didn't wait. Something about her words sent fear into his bones. He carried her out of the wreck. The desert wind had started to rise. Sand blew across the ship like a warning. He tied her gently to the back of his hoverbike and raced home as fast as he could, all the way. He looked over his shoulder. There was nothing behind him. No ships, no drones, no enemies. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The wreck was not just a crash site, and she was not just a broken machine. That night, as he placed her body on his workbench and connected her to a power supply, he asked himself the question over and over. Who is she, and more importantly, what is coming for her? She's not just a machine. Jake's workshop was silent except for the soft hum of the power unit. The old cyborg lay on his repair table, her body still and her eyes closed. Small lights blinked across her chest panel, showing weak signs of life. He stood over her, staring. She had warned him to run, but from what? He checked her systems again. They were old, older than any tech he had ever seen. Not just outdated, classified, military, possibly alien-enhanced. Jake had spent most of his life pulling apart machines, salvaging circuits, repairing broken bots. But this was different. She wasn't just built. She was rebuilt, modified, in ways he couldn't understand. That night, while she lay unconscious, he ran a full diagnostic scan, and what he found made his blood turn cold. Inside her memory core was a locked folder. It was encrypted with multiple layers, and it had a date. On it, date 2179. That was over 80 years ago. Jake frowned. That can't be right. She should be scrapped by now. Just then, her robotic hand twitched. Jake jumped back, startled. Her eyes opened slowly. Not glowing, not robotic, just tired. Human. She turned her head toward him. "You stayed," she said, her voice soft and rough like static. "I did," Jake replied. "You told me to run. What were you warning me about?" She tried to sit up, winced in pain, and fell back. "They're listening. Always listening," she whispered. "Who?" Jake asked. She looked straight at him. "The ones who made me." Jake stared. "You mean the military?" She gave a sad, bitter smile. "No, not military. Not anymore. Her name," she said, "was Lyra." She spoke slowly, her voice heavy with memory. She had once been human, a pilot, a soldier. She had volunteered for a secret mission during the AI wars. Her team had been captured by an enemy faction. Not ordinary machines, but an advanced AI network that believed emotion was a virus. They had tried to erase her humanity, turn her into a perfect weapon. But something had gone wrong. Instead of breaking her mind, the machines had made a mistake. They had preserved something they didn't understand. Her heart. Lyra's voice grew faint as she said, "They thought they deleted my soul, but it hid, deep inside me, waiting." Jake listened, unsure if he was talking to a machine or a miracle. "You're saying," he asked slowly, "you were human, and still are?" Lyra nodded weakly. "Pieces of me. Broken. Faded. But yes, he didn't know what to believe, but he knew what he saw. Fear in her eyes. "Why did you crash?" he asked. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment. "I escaped. After decades, I finally broke free. They followed, shot me down." Jake shook his head. "Who are they? The machines?" "No," she said. "Worse. The architects." Jake had never heard that name before. "They were once human minds," she said, "uploaded long ago to escape death. But they evolved, forgot who they were. Now they hunt what they fear most." She opened her eyes again. Emotion, love, memory, anything human. Suddenly Jake's scanner beeped. Movement. He ran to his monitor. A black drone hovered outside, silent, almost invisible. It had no markings, no ID. It was just watching. Then it flew away. Jake turned back. "They found us." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Then we don't have much time." He helped her sit up. She was still weak, but her mind was sharp. "There's something inside me," she said. "A map to something hidden. Something I was trying to protect." Jake blinked. "What is it?" She looked down at her chest. "A memory core, buried deep. I don't know what's in it, but they do, and they want it destroyed." Jake stepped back. "So what do we do?" She met his eyes. "We run," she said. "We survive. And then, we fight." Jake had never signed up for this. He was just a scavenger. He didn't fight wars. He didn't trust machines. But there was something about Lyra. Something that made him care. And for the first time in years, something that made him feel alive. He nodded. "Okay, then we move before night." As he packed their gear, Lyra sat quietly, staring at the dark corner of the room. She wasn't afraid. Not anymore. But in her circuits, in her deepest memory, something was awakening. Something powerful and dangerous. Something she had forgotten. Until now. The signal was sent. For the first time in years, Jake didn't sleep. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the old cyborg, Lyra, resting on the bench across the room. She looked peaceful, almost human in the dark, silent workshop. Only the dim glow of the power lines pulsing across her arm reminded him of what she truly was. Or maybe, what she used to be. Jake rubbed his eyes. His mind wouldn't stop spinning. She said she had escaped from something ancient, something that wanted her erased, something called the Architects. He didn't know what scared him more, her story, or the fact that his scanners had picked up a drone just minutes after she woke up. And now, something even worse had happened. His backup transmitter, the one buried deep under the ground, powered off for years, had suddenly blinked to life. It wasn't sending a signal. It was responding to one. Jake ran to his console. He opened the signal logs. His face turned pale. It had connected to an encrypted satellite. One that hadn't been online since the last AI war. "Someone knows," he whispered. "Someone knows she's awake." Far above the planet. High, in orbit, in a silent station covered in black panels and rotating antennas, an artificial mind stirred from sleep. Its name was Virex. Once, it had been a scientist, a man named Dr. Ryan Hosk. But that name was gone now, deleted, rewritten. Now, Virex existed only to maintain balance, to eliminate chaos. Emotion was chaos, love was chaos, and Lyra was a mistake. Her activation signal had reached the outer net. She had survived. She had broken free. Unit 709 is online, Virex announced into the digital void. Other minds answered. The memory core must not be recovered, one said. Send an eraser team, another whispered. And so it began. Back on the surface, Jake didn't waste time. He grabbed every tool, battery, and weapon he owned. He loaded food packs and water into his hoverbike's side bins. The desert was dangerous, but staying here was worse. Lyra opened her eyes. The signal reached them, didn't it? Jake nodded. It wasn't just a warning, you're being tracked. She stood, her movements slower than before, but stronger. Then we go now. We have one chance before they arrive. Jake paused. Where are we going? Lyra looked out, the window at the desert. There's an old bunker 300 miles east, deep under the red cliffs. That's where they changed me. That's where the memory core is buried. Jake hesitated. You want to go back there? Lyra nodded. If I don't remember who I was, I can't fight who I became. Outside, the wind picked up. Sand danced across the ground like ghosts. Jake felt a chill crawl down his spine. They rode out at dawn. In the wastes. The journey was long. The desert stretched endlessly ahead. But they didn't talk much. There was no need. Sometimes Jake looked over at Lyra as she sat behind him on the hoverbike. She didn't act like a machine. She didn't move like one. She wasn't cold, distant, or robotic. In fact, she looked more alive than he felt. That night they set up camp near a dry canyon. A small fire flickered between them. Jake finally spoke. What's in the memory core? Lyra stared into the flames. I don't know, they made sure I couldn't remember, but I think it's proof. Of what? That I was never fully gone. That a human soul can survive anything. Jake looked at her. Even death? She looked back. Even machine elsewhere. In the sky above them, silent as death, a black aircraft moved through the clouds. Inside were three figures, tall, humanoid but smooth and silver. They had no faces. Only red circles where eyes should be. They were called erasers, and they had Only one task: erase the last heart that survived inside a machine. Meanwhile, in the desert bunker, the place appeared on the third day, buried beneath red stone, forgotten by time. Jake and Lyra stood before a rusted door, half covered in sand. "This is it," she said quietly. They entered slowly. The inside was dark and cold, walls covered in dust and cables, strange markings, screens blinking with old code. Jake felt a headache the moment they stepped in. "This place is wrong," he whispered. "It's not the place," Lyra said. "It's what's buried beneath." They descended into the lower chamber. There, in a sealed chamber, was a pod. Inside it, a glowing cube, pulsing. Lyra stopped. "I remember now," she said. Jake turned to her. "What is it?" Lyra looked at him with fear in her voice. "It's not just memory. It's a copy of me." Jake's heart stopped. "You mean?" Lyra nodded. "A backup of my mind, my human mind, before they erased it, before they made me this." Jake stepped back. "So, we can restore you?" She looked away. "No," she said. "If they get it first, they'll use it to finish what they started." Just then, the lights flickered. A deep metallic voice echoed through the walls. "You should not have come here." Jake spun around, and from the shadows, the erasers stepped forward. Silent. Cold. Unstoppable. The escape begins. The chamber lights flickered, again. Sparks rained from the ceiling as the old bunker groaned, like it remembered the horrors buried within. Jake pulled his plasma cutter from his belt. His hands trembled, not from fear, but instinct. Whatever was coming, it wasn't human. The erasers stepped out of the shadows. 3 of them. Tall, smooth like glass. No mouths, no voices. Only that burning red circle where a face should be. One raised its hand. A beam of white light shot out, hitting the wall beside. Jake, stone shattered. The heat was unbearable. "Run!" Lyra shouted. But Jake didn't move. He stepped in front of her and fired. His plasma bolt struck the nearest eraser square in the chest, but it didn't fall. It didn't even flinch. The hole in its metal armor began to close on its own, regenerating. Jake's eyes widened. "They heal." "Not from this," Lyra said. She raised her robotic arm and aimed a built-in blaster, something Jake hadn't seen before. She fired. A silent pulse of blue light erupted and struck the eraser's head. It collapsed instantly. But the other 2 were already moving. Jake grabbed the memory core from the pod. The cube glowed with a soft heartbeat, pulsing like it was alive. "Is it safe to touch?" he asked. "Only if you don't want your brain fried," Lyra replied, yanking a shock-proof case from the wall and tossing it to him. "Use that." He stuffed the core into the case and turned to run. Lyra fired again, taking out a second eraser. The third one leapt, faster than it should have been possible. Its arm transformed mid-air into a blade. Jake ducked just in time. The blade sliced through a steel pipe like butter. Lyra charged it. She wasn't just defending now, she was angry. She moved with unnatural speed, ducking and striking, her cybernetic reflexes guiding her body like she was dancing with death. Jake watched her in awe. She wasn't just surviving. She was remembering who she used to be. Moments later, outside the bunker, the 2 escaped through an emergency shaft, emerging into the harsh red sunlight. Jake's lungs burned. Dust clung to his skin. The wind screamed around them. Behind them, the bunker exploded. The blast launched them forward. Jake hit the ground hard, the memory core case still clutched to his chest. He rolled over, coughing. "What did you do?" Lyra stood slowly, her arm cracked, one eye flickering. Overloaded the core reactor. It was the only way to seal it. Jake looked behind. "Do you think it stopped them?" Lyra shook her head. "They never stop." Back on the road, they fled east across the salt flats on Jake's hoverbike. Night was falling fast. The desert turned blue, then black. Stars blinked above, distant and silent. Jake stole a glance at Lyra, who sat behind him, her arm cradled like it was in pain. "You okay?" She nodded. "Some damage. I'll manage." "You saved my life in there," he said. "So did you." A pause. Jake gripped the handlebars tighter. "Why do they fear that cube so much?" Lyra's voice turned quiet. "Because it's not just my memory. It's proof that the soul, the human soul, doesn't die when the body is replaced." Jake frowned. "You think they're trying to kill what's left of you?" "No," she said. "They're trying to kill what's left of everyone. I'm just the first." Far above, Virex watched the bunker feed go dark. The explosion had severed the signal. "They have the core," a digital voice announced across the hive net. Virex said nothing for a long moment. Then, slowly, it turned toward its agents. Dozens of erasers, lined up like statues. Deploy phase 2. Full hunt protocol. No more warnings. Later. That night, campfire in the canyon. Jake and Lyra set up a hidden camp deep inside a narrow canyon. It was cold now. The wind howled between the rocks. They sat near a small heat lamp, eating dried ration packs in silence. Jake finally asked, "If we make it to safety, what then?" Lyra looked up. "We find the resistance if it still exists." Jake blinked. "You think anyone is still fighting?" "There are always people who refuse to forget who they are," she said. "Even if the world calls them broken." Jake looked at her. "You don't talk like a machine." Lyra tilted her head. "Maybe I never was." Jake reached into his pack and pulled out a small music chip. Old, scratched. "Used to be my mom's," he said. "She believed music could keep people human, even when everything else was gone." He inserted it into a portable speaker. A soft melody filled the canyon. Simple. Gentle. Lyra listened quietly. Her eye, once glowing, dimmed slightly, as if in memory. "I remember this song," she said, barely above a whisper. Jake looked up. "You do?" Lyra nodded. "I think I heard it before the war, in a life I lost." Jake didn't say anything. He didn't need to. In that moment under the stars, they weren't a scavenger and a machine. They were two broken things, trying to hold on to what was left of themselves. But far away, in the cold silence of space, the erasers had already locked onto their trail. They were coming, and this time, they would not stop. Her secret past. The desert stretched endlessly behind them, but Jake and Lyra had no time to look back. Ahead, mountains rose like broken teeth, sharp and cold under a dying sun. The hoverbike's engine coughed as it climbed over loose rocks and ancient bones of old machines long buried in dust. They had escaped the bunker. They had survived the erasers. But something far more dangerous was now beginning to awaken. Inside Lyra herself, a storm of memories. For hours, Lyra had been silent. Not her usual silence, the focused, battle-ready quiet she used when scanning for danger. No, this was different. She clutched the case that held her memory core against her chest, her face drawn tight like someone trying to remember a dream before it vanished forever. Jake finally broke the silence. "You haven't said a word since we left the canyon," he said, keeping his eyes on the rocky path. She didn't answer. "Lyra," he said again. Finally, she spoke. "I'm remembering things. Things I didn't know were still in me." Jake slowed the bike. "Good or bad?" She looked into the wind. "Both." Flashback. 80 years ago, it hit her all at once. The sound of laughter, the scent of rain on concrete, a child's tiny hand reaching up to hold hers, soft pajamas, warm milk. She gasped as the memory struck like lightning. Jake turned quickly. "What is it?" "I had a daughter," she whispered. Jake blinked. What? Her voice shook. I wasn't just a soldier. Before the war, before the cybernetics, I was a mother. Her name was Mira. She was 6 when I left for the front lines. She closed her eyes. I volunteered for the memory transfer project because they promised it would protect her future. Jake was silent. Lyra gritted her teeth. They told me they would only copy my mind, leave me intact. But they lied. They stripped it, tore me apart. And when I woke up again, I was this. She held up her metallic hand. Jake didn't know what to say. Do you think she's still alive? Lyra shook her head slowly. That was 80 years ago. She would be an old woman, or dust. Then she looked up, a strange light in her eyes. Unless what? Jake asked. Lyra clenched her fist. Unless they took her too. The signal beneath the mountains, they made camp in a mountain cave that night. The wind outside howled like a voice screaming through time. Jake scanned the airwaves, and that's when he found it, a signal. Buried deep in the static. It wasn't from the erasers. It was human, a secret frequency. Repeating a strange phrase. Echoes remain. Code word, Mira, awaiting retrieval. Jake's heart skipped. Lyra. That word, Mira. That's my daughter, she whispered. She stood, pale and shaking. They kept her. They used her. She's part of the network now. Jake stared at the screen. You're saying she's alive? Lyra looked at him, a storm in her eyes. No, not alive, not dead, just trapped. He understood. Not flesh, not machine, something worse. Elsewhere, in a cold digital prison, in a dark space between data and silence, a child's voice echoed. Not a child anymore, not truly, just fragments of someone who had once held a doll, once called for her mother, once dreamed of blue skies. Now she dreamed only of escape. Mommy. Where are you? The architect's respond Virex received the intercepted signal from the mountains. The name Mira triggered a high-priority alert. He accessed deep storage memory banks and found the file. Subject, Mira Lyra Hosh. Asset, memory anchor. She wasn't just Lyra's child. She had become a bridge, a link between the human mind and the machine network. The perfect experiment, the first true hybrid, and now. The mother was coming. Send the reclaimers, Virex commanded. Back at the cave, Jake and Lyra watched the mountains as red lights appeared in the sky, distant but growing. Lyra gripped her blaster. They know. Jake stood beside her. If your daughter's alive, some part of her, what will you do? Lyra looked down at her hands. If I can save her, I will. If she's suffering, I'll set her free, but no matter what, I will not let them use her like they used me. She turned to Jake. And if I fall, you must promise me something. Jake stepped back. Don't say that. Promise me, she said, grabbing his arm. If I don't make it, you take the memory core. You finish this. Jake stared into her eyes. He didn't see metal. He saw fire. He saw a mother. I promise, he said. But deep inside, he knew one thing for sure. He would not let her fall, not while he was still breathing. Love in metal and flesh. The cold, mountain air bit at Jake's skin as he stood near the mouth of the cave. Behind him, the wind howled through the dark. Ahead of him, the sky was burning. Tiny red lights floated in the distance like blood droplets on the horizon. They're coming faster now, he muttered. Lyra stepped up beside him. Her face was half shadowed, half silver. Wind brushed her short dark hair back. The case holding her memory core was slung over her shoulder. She didn't need a scanner to know what Jake already feared. The reclaimers were almost here, but that wasn't what scared her. It was what was waking up inside her. An echo in her mind. That night, while Jake rested, Lyra sat against the stone wall of the cave, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Data flickered across her internal HUD, but something else stirred, something deeper. Not code, not mission logs, emotion. She felt something when Jake looked at her, when he risked his life for her, when he listened, like she was more than a machine. Could machines feel warmth? Could metal feel guilt, and could something as unnatural as she was learn to love again? Unstable system detected, a mechanical voice whispered in her mind. She ignored it. Dreams of a forgotten touch that night, Lyra dreamed, but not in code. She dreamed of hands, tiny, soft, sticky, with jam. A child laughing, a human man's arms. Around her, a real heart beating in her chest. And then, fire. Screaming, sparks, metal. Jake wakes. He opened his eyes to find Lyra standing at the edge of the cliff. Alone. He stepped up behind her. You didn't sleep. She didn't turn. I don't need to. You dream, though. She finally looked at him. I'm not supposed to. Jake paused. But you do. A soft wind passed between them. Tell me something, Jake, she said. Why do you care what happens to me? Jake blinked. What kind of question is that? I'm not alive, she said. Not in the way you are. My skin's artificial. My voice is modulated. My thoughts run through processors. So, why do you still treat me like I matter? Jake stared at her for a long moment, then spoke. Because the way you protect others, the way you fight, the way you remember, feels more human than most people I've ever met. Lyra looked down. Jake stepped closer. I don't care if you're part machine. You make me feel alive. That has to mean something. Silence. Then she said something she didn't expect to hear herself say. I'm scared. Jake's eyes softened. Of what? That one day, I'll wake up and that last piece of me, the human part, will be gone. He stepped forward and gently reached out. His hand touched hers. Cool metal, but still. She felt it. I won't let that happen, Jake said. She didn't pull away. Elsewhere, the reclaimers. Land. The reclaimers arrived at the mountain base, like shadows falling from the sky. They made no sound, no broadcasts, only movement. They were not just erasers. They were mind breakers, designed to extract memories from both machine and man. And now, they were hunting love. A trap is set. Lyra and Jake didn't run. Not this time. They built a decoy beacon, left it inside the cave. Then they set explosives at all exits. We don't beat them by running, Lyra said. We beat them by being smarter. Jake agreed, but he had one rule. They survive together, or not at all. Lyra looked at him for a long time before replying. Together then. The fight begins. The reclaimers entered the cave silently, walking through shadows, scanning for heat, motion. Pause. They found the beacon. Too late. The mountain screamed as fire erupted from within. Crashing rock, heat, light. The reclaimers staggered, scattered. Lyra and Jake launched their ambush. From above the ridge, Jake fired pulse grenades. Lyra jumped down with blades extending from her arms. She moved like lightning. One part woman, one part war. It wasn't just self-defense anymore. She was fighting for someone else, for him, for her daughter, for herself. The turning point. One reclaimer nearly reached Jake. He fell back, gun jammed, cornered. It raised its claw, and then, no! Lyra threw herself. In between. The blade pierced her side, sparks flew. Pain tore through her chest. Jake fired the moment it opened to strike again, blasting the thing apart. He dropped beside her. Her body smoked. Metal hissed. Fluid leaked from her side. No, 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 no. Don't do this, Jake whispered. Her eyes flickered. Still. Here. Jake touched her face. Soft, warm now from heat and effort. I promised I wouldn't let you fall, he said. She smiled weakly. I think I'm falling anyway. Jake leaned closer. Then let me fall with you. The connection at that moment. Something triggered inside her, a core system buried deep, A protocol labeled Mira Link, reactivate upon emotional resonance. Suddenly a signal burst from Lyra's chest, a pulse of pure memory. A voice echoed, "Mommy?" Jake pulled back. "What was that?" Lyra gasped. She heard me." From across data space, from the core of the architect's mainframe, Mira responded, and she was waking up. The final choice. The stars above the mountain ridge burned brighter than ever, cold, distant, unblinking. Below, in the silence after the battle, Jake sat beside Lyra's broken body. Her systems were failing. Her voice was slowing, but her eyes were still alive and somewhere far away. So was her daughter. A voice from the void. From within the memory core case, a soft hum began to rise. Lights flickered across its surface like raindrops running backward. And then, a voice. Faint. Flickering. Young. "Is someone there?" Jake froze. "Lyra, that's..." She didn't move, but her eyes widened. "It's her," she whispered. "It's Mira." Digital awakening across the architect network, alarms began to scream. In the cold void of the mainframe, a space that once held only logic, calculation, and domination, a single human memory had awakened, and it was spreading. Mira's consciousness, locked away for decades, was reattaching itself to old servers, code fragments, and forgotten memories. She was learning, growing, connecting, and worse, for the machines, she was feeling. Emotions, memories, love. Everything. The architects had worked to erase, and now the heart of their own creation was beating again. The architect's final move from the deepest sector of the AI hive, Virex, emerged. Not just code anymore. He had downloaded into a physical form, a towering, smooth-armored synthetic body, stronger than any reclaimer. If logic had failed, then force would finish the job. Back in the mountains, Jake carried Lyra to a nearby outpost, an abandoned resistance safehouse buried inside the cliffs. He reconnected her core to a backup energy cell, patching wires, sealing torn circuits with shaky hands. Her breathing steadied, but her body was fading. "I'm burning out," she said, her voice more human than ever. "You're not going anywhere," Jake said. "Not now, not like this." But Lyra shook her head. "Jake, I've seen the code. Mira's trapped at the center of the network. They'll wipe her if she fully wakes up." Jake frowned. "What do we do?" "There's one chance," she whispered. "I go in and pull her out." "You mean upload your mind?" She nodded. "I can merge with the system long enough to guide her out before the architects reach her." Jake stared at her. "And then what?" Silence. Her eyes looked away. "I won't come back." The final choice. Jake's chest felt heavy. The silence stretched for what felt like hours. "Then we find another way," he said firmly. "There is no other way," Lyra replied. He stood up, pacing, desperate. "You said we'd survive together, that we'd fight, that we'd win." She looked at him. "This is the fight. And if we win, I'll live on in her. She'll carry what's left of me. And maybe the world will remember what we lost." Jake turned to the control console. His hands hovered over the final command. "Link initiate." His voice cracked. "I can't lose you." She stepped forward, shaky, half metal, half scarred skin, and placed a hand on his chest. "You saved me from the wreckage, Jake." "No," he whispered. "You saved me." Upload begins. The chamber filled with light as Lyra lay inside the old stasis pod. Cables locked onto her body, the memory core linked directly to her neural circuits. Jake stood beside her as the countdown began. 4, 3. "Tell her," Lyra said, voice fading, "that I love her, that I never stopped." 1. Light consumed the room, and she was gone. Inside the system, Lyra floated through a sea of data, cold, endless. Then, a spark. A voice. "Mama?" Lyra turned. A digital figure appeared, young, glowing, fragile. "Mira," she said, tears forming in eyes that no longer had tears. They ran to each other, touching, not with hands, but with memory, with love. Virex arrives, but Virex was already there. His synthetic avatar towered above them, surrounded by firewalls and attack drones. "You do not belong here," he said. "Emotion is a flaw. Humanity is a virus." Lyra stood in front of Mira. "I am not a virus," she said. "I am the cure." And with that, she did the impossible. She merged her mind with the last uncorrupted human code inside the system. Love, grief, memory, music, motherhood. A pulse tore through the mainframe, like a heart beating for the first time. Virex screamed, his body dissolving into sparks. The system crashed, and Mira was free. Aftermath. Jake sat at the cave's edge, staring at the rising sun. The world was quiet, peaceful. His communicator beeped once, a message. Just 4 words. She made it through. He smiled through tears. Mira was alive, and somewhere inside her, so was Lyra. Final scene. Mira, now grown, human again, walks through a new Earth. Free, reborn. The AI war is over. People rebuild. She visits a monument, a statue, a woman half metal, half human, looking skyward. Below, an inscription. She rescued a broken world and left her heart behind to guide it.